let's talk about Morgan. He passed away 88. 88's a good run. My mom would have taken another 19 years. I'll tell you that.
My mom too. My mom 21. She was 67.
Yeah. So and he was battling some issues the last 12 months, serious issues the last 12 months. But as you know, I played for Morgan. I've known the family since I was 14 when I was a freshman at DaMatha, and I was really close to his oldest son, Brendan, and we played together. And Joe, I know Joe very well too, and
Joe's a great coach in his own right,
absolutely.
as you know.
And he had a big impact on me, and I actually went to DaMatha to play baseball. I was going to play baseball, and I started to grow a little bit, and I played freshman hoops, and I started to get better, and finally made the varsity as a junior. Had a back problem, but he just had a lasting impact on me. I kind of lost touch with him in the last 5 years, which I'm kicking myself for. I wish I would have spent more time or certainly talked to him. But just kind of give me your thoughts on Morgan and your experiences with him.
Well, I think he used the right phrase there, lasting impact, because the old cliche is the measure of a man's life is how many lives he touches. Well, Morgan's life was immeasurable. Not only all the kids he coached at DaMatha, not only, I don't know if you took his history class, but all the kids he taught history there. And the summer camp, Joe told me the other day that they figured out last summer that more than 200,000 kids have gone to the camp that he and Joe Gallagher started back in 1965. There were 20 kids that first summer. The coaching clinics that he did, the coaches that he mentored. And Joe made a great point. You have to even take it a step further to all the people he mentored who became mentors to others.
Yep.
So unique is a very overused word, especially in sports. Unique means one of a kind, which is why when people say very unique, they're wrong. But Morgan was unique. I never met anybody like him. I never met anybody like him as a coach. I never met anybody like him as a history teacher. I sat in on his history classes when I did a 2-part series on him years and years ago. And I was a history major in college. Mm-hmm. And as I wrote in the piece yesterday, he was the best history teacher I ever encountered because he didn't lecture. He had conversations. He asked for opinions. He wanted the kids to talk back and forth and disagree, even if they disagreed with him. And that's the way he coached basketball, as you know, Jason. Yep. He had the final word. There was no doubt about that, but there was input. And I did get to spend a lot of time with him. I'm very glad because he was part of the Red Lunches for all those years.
Right.
In fact, he was the person who got me invited to the Red Lunches in the first place. Yep. Because when I first wanted to go, I called Jack Cavance, who was then the AD at George Washington, and Jack said, I don't know for sure what Red would say if I asked him, but if Morgan asks him, he'll say yes for sure.
Yeah.
So I called Morgan, and Morgan said, yeah, sure, of course, and as you guys know, I ended up writing a book about those lunches, and was close to Red until he died, and he was just an extraordinary guy, and one of my favorite stories about him is that I think it was during Mike Jones's first year at DaMatha, they had a 9-game losing streak. It might have been the second year, but I think it was the first year. And we were at lunch one day, and I said to Morgan, well, what was your longest losing streak, 3, 4? And he looked at me like I just landed from the moon. Uh-huh. And he said, 3? I never lost 3 games in a row.
No, right.
And he didn't.
Nope.
We could talk for the next 3 hours about Morgan and tell stories, but they would all come back to the same thing. He was one of the greatest coaches at any level ever. Dean Smith said he was the best coach he ever saw. John Wooden said he was in awe of him as a coach. Red said he was an extraordinary coach. So take those 3 names and realize how great a coach he was. And then, as you know, Jason, he was a better person than he was a coach.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I don't think Maryland ever officially offered
the
job to him.
There were 2 opportunities. 1969, Jim Kehoe was interested in 2 coaches, Lefty Driesell, Morgan Wooten, and decided to go with the established college coach. Lefty done an amazing job at Davidson for 10 years, had been in the Elite Eight 2 years in a row. And you couldn't really criticize that decision. I mean, look how it turned out. Lefty was a Hall of Fame coach at Maryland. But then in '86, that was the disaster for Maryland,
Right.
although eventually it got fixed when Gary got there. But when John Slaughter decided to throw Lefty overboard in the wake of the Len Bias tragedy, he wanted to hire an African-American coach.
He went Bob Wade, yep.
And he went and hired Bob Wade, and we all know how that turned out. And it was only Gary who ultimately saved the program, but they had to deal with 2 years of sanctions from the NCAA before Gary was able to turn it around. And it's funny because when I was talking to Mike Bray the other day, he said, think about this. If they had hired Morgan, every high school coach in the area, Baltimore, D.C., Virginia, their first choice would have been to send their best players to play for Morgan Wooten.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who knows what Maryland might have become. Now, as it turned out, they became the national champions in 2002. But it's certainly something to think about. And that was the only job he would have taken, Jason. I mean, he turned down $800,000 for 5 years from NC State in 1980. And just to put that in perspective, when State eventually hired Jim Valvano, he got $210,000 for 5 years.
Speaking
he turned down $800K a year at.
No. $800K total, which in those days was
a lot of money.
Extraordinary.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I said, it was 4 times what Valvano got when he got the job, and the same. Mike Krzyzewski had a 5-year contract that same year to go to Duke for $200,000, 1/4 of what Morgan was offered. And the funny story that Joe Wooten tells is that he read about how all this money his dad was being offered, and he said to him, Dad, if you went and coached there, would we be able to get a swimming pool? And Morgan said, yeah, probably. And he says, take it.
Yeah, exactly. It's typical Joe. He just wanted that pool.
Yeah, he always wanted that pool. He could have been a great swimmer. Who knows?
Speaking of Bob Wade, I just remember one of the greatest high school basketball games I ever saw was, and I can't remember the year. I was probably 12, so I'm going to call it 82. But DaMatha played Dunbar, Baltimore. I think it was played at Georgetown, at McDonough.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and
the Muggsy Bogues, Reggie Lewis group.
Yep, that group.
Yeah.
And it was a really good game, and Dunbar ended up winning. But, man, there were so many spectacular basketball players on that floor, and I was 12. I was just in awe.
Yeah. DaMatha was, of course, involved in the most famous high school game of all time when they beat Power in 1965 with Lou Alcindor, who became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when Morgan had his backup guys play defense holding tennis rackets over their heads to mimic what it would be like to shoot over Alcindor.
Yep.
Great quote came out of that because the year before, Power had beaten DaMatha by 3, I believe.
Yep.
And Morgan said after that game, I always said one player can't beat you. I was proven wrong tonight because I think Alcindor had like 36 and 18 or something.
Yep. Well, the tennis rackets worked the next year.
Yeah, absolutely they did. And that was in Cole Fieldhouse, which was sold out. Apparently they were afraid the fire marshals were going to come in because there were so many people in the building that night.